by looking at the ethnic claims people make over the land of Palestine. Joseph was of the opinion that the Jewish people have a claim over the land of Palestine because they've had an existence in this land for thousands of years, which everyone accepts. Everyone agrees to that claim. That claim, as far as it goes to highlight the point that the Jewish people have been there for a very long time. My contention was in response that that claim does not justify the current atrocities that are taking place on that land. Okay, the atrocities against the Jewish people, against the Palestinians and the Jewish people. I agree. There are Jewish innocent victims of terrorism, and there are Palestinian victims of terrorism. There are children, women, men, elderly dying on daily basis in Palestine, being bombed, being shot, being completely decimated. Okay, I'm saying none of these claims that go back thousands of years justify the current occupation, the current brutal occupation of the land of Palestine. It cannot be justified. Yeah, wa alaikum salam. Wa alaikum salam. No problem.
So for the camera,
no, wa alaikum salam.
You can't say wa alaikum salam because he thinks I might have wished death be upon him. Sa'am alaikum, which I did. I said assalamu alaikum, and he refuses to say wa alaikum salam. But thank you.
Now I'm gonna say wa alaikum salam.
Thank you, Aki. Thank you.
May peace be upon you. I'll say it in the English language so that people don't misunderstand. Okay, I'm saying assalamu alaikum.
Peace be upon you.
No problem. He's still our brother. He's a bit lost. He's our brother. He's a bit lost, but he's our brother. And our purpose here is to spread the love, spread education, spread beautiful ideas so that we can live together in peace. So today we were talking about history. So during this discussion, when we were talking about the claim of the Zionists over the land of Palestine, a lot of points were raised by Joseph, by myself. We talked about history, the presence of the Jewish people in that land, and then the absence after the Roman destruction of the city.
I'm being filmed, I can't, sorry.
The destruction of the city of Jerusalem at the hands of Emperor Hadrian in 132 and renaming of the city, all of that we discussed. Now we're coming to the point where I made a claim that the Jewish people were protected by Muslims and the Muslim civilization for over 1,000 years, right? And Joseph came back and he said, no, I don't agree with that. Actually, that claim is problematic. And then I said, now we are talking. Why? Because this is
get a camera.
Yes. After I said that, get a camera so that we can get this on camera, where a Jew and a Muslim can talk about the treatment of the Jewish people at the hands of the Muslims throughout the history of Muslim civilization. This is a very, very interesting discussion which I want to get into. Because me and Joseph are talking, you can talk later on.
Ask questions.
So Joseph, why do you actually disagree with that claim? My claim is that the Jewish golden age was when the Muslims protected the Jews for over 1,000 years.
Of course you'd say that, you're Muslim. But I'll come to it.
But
I'll respond to what
yes,
you said.
Please.
So one of the things that people that either Muslim apologists propagating Dawah do, they will take a point in history and they'll say it was great at this time, therefore throughout history the Muslims were good to the Jews. And that's simply not true. There were Muslims that oppressed Muslims throughout history, so of course there were Muslims that oppressed Jews throughout history. Okay. So I'll give you an example. In Morocco, you had a caliphate called the Almohads, and they said to the Jewish people that were living there, either you convert to Islam, which is against Islam, you're going to tell me the Quran says that it doesn't say that, but either convert to Islam or we kill you. So Jews fled en masse from Morocco. And they went to Egypt, they went to various places, usually under other Muslim caliphates that were more favourable to the Jews. And so, first and foremost, there has never been just a consistent period throughout time for all Muslim caliphates, empires, where the Jews had it good. The second aspect of that is even when times were great for Jews under Muslim Caliphate, it was relative.
Were they ever great?
That's what I'm trying to get to. It was relative.
Okay.
And they were still second-class citizens. They still had a different tax system. They still weren't allowed to achieve certain positions within that Islamic society. They had greater freedoms and opportunities than in Christendom, but that's not necessarily a good thing, because in Christendom, again, some Christian nations were good to the Jews, others were terrible to the Jews. And so it just depended at which point of history and which rulers you're talking. So categorically, you are wrong if you said that Muslims were always good to the Jews. They weren't. Secondly,
Did I make that claim?
No.
Okay, so what was
Did
your
I say
claim?
always?
You said that the Jews... Okay, what was your statement?
I said the
Well,
Muslim
okay,
civilization treated the Jews with utmost respect.
And I just gave you examples where they didn't.
Okay, when I made a general claim, which is based upon the general history of the Muslim civilization. Now, if you show me exceptions to that general rule, I will acknowledge the exceptions, but the exceptions do not represent the general behavior of the Muslim civilization, which goes across over 1,000 years.
So let's take them off.
So let's look at your examples you gave. Wait.
Okay, sorry.
You raised some very interesting examples, and this is why I believe someone as intelligent as you
Got all the cameras.
ought to know better, because you are a well-read Jewish gentleman, and I can see you are.
Give it to the Jews.
I can see you are religiously observant. The mics are growing.
He's got 3 mics, I've got none. Okay.
You take that one. You take that one. There you
all
go.
of you, don't worry.
Okay, so the point I want to pick on is what al-Muwahidun in the Arabic language, or al-Mohads in the English language, did to the Jewish people. Before I get to that example, my contention is, why would you use, for example, ISIS as a representative example for Islam? Okay, only 2 kind of people do that to Muslims today, right? One, who are completely ignorant of the history of Muslim civilization. 2, who hate Islam, who completely hate Islam and want to deliberately tarnish the name of Islam and Muslims. There is no third option in my mind. So I will assume the better, I'll assume the best thing for you, that you are ignorant about the history of Muslim civilization. I won't assume the latter for you, right? I don't think you are a Islam or Muslim hater. I don't think so.
I'm not,
I hope you're not.
First and foremost, I'm not a Muslim hater. I have huge respect for Islam.
So it's confirmed.
But I would like to extend that. I say Muslims as my cousin.
Good.
And I believe that we should work towards building a lasting peace.
I agree.
With peace, I believe it's truth and reconciliation.
Okay.
I believe for us to make peace, neither you nor I should deny the reality of what's happened.
Absolutely.
And I will say there have been Muslim leaders who've done incredible acts of kindness for the Jewish people. However,
now we're talking.
Even amongst the most, those that are considered the great.
So let me give some examples. No. I want to talk about al-Mohads, because you made a point, and it's only fair that I respond to that point. So al-Muwahidun were an extremist group that came to power in Morocco in the 12th century, and Muslims suffered at their hands before anyone else did. And in fact, when they did persecute Muslims, Christians as well as Jews, who protected the Jews, who gave refuge to the Jews, Muslims elsewhere. Let me give you an example, a specific example. Who is known as the second Moses in Jewish history? Maimonides faced the Almohads firsthand. Maimonides was alive, born in Cordoba, raised in Cordoba, wrote in the Arabic language. His famous book, A Guide for the Perplexed, was written in the Arabic language in Hebrew characters. He was a scholar of Judaism who is known as the second Moses in Jewish history. He was so important that he was given this title, and he wrote Jewish commentaries on the Torah, and he flourished in a Muslim society. Now Almohads came on the scene and they forced him to accept Islam, which we wholeheartedly condemn. Muslims were condemning that. How do we know that? Maimonides, having pretended to accept Islam, moved to Egypt. Now when he went to Egypt, he went back to Judaism, and then there the judges put him on trial for apostatizing from Islam. What happened? He goes to court, and who testifies? Who testifies in his favor? A Jewish scholar from Spain who was being persecuted by Al-Muwahhids, Al-Muwahhidun, who were an extremist group which other Muslims were condemning at that time, like we do today with ISIS, right? He moved to Egypt. There, Muslims came to rescue him, and they said his conversion was forced. Therefore, it was not a conversion. That rule does not apply on him, and he was left alone. And he became what? He became a physician directly to the brother of the Sultan. The Sultan's brother was Malik al-Afdal, the brother of Sultan Salahuddin Ayyubi, Saladin. Okay, so he was protected by the Muslims against a persecution by the Muslims. Okay, so this is very clear. This is the example you gave didn't actually help your case. Second example, very quickly, you made was that when the Jews did have good times with the Muslims, that was relative. Okay, it depends. They were still second-class citizens. I want to correct you there. I want to assume the best about you again, that you are completely ignorant of what happened in Spain.
One at a time? Can I
no, because you raised 2 points, so let me quickly respond to it, then you can come back to it. Okay, I will respond to Joseph by giving him a number of examples. This claim again is completely misplaced, doesn't acknowledge history of Islam and Muslims with the Jewish people. There were Jewish prime ministers in Spain. Is everyone listening to me? Hello? Yes? There were Jewish prime ministers in Spain. How do you make someone who is a second-class citizen a prime minister? Is the question. And who am I talking about? Hasda ibn Shaprut. He was the prime minister to the most powerful Muslim monarch in the history of Western Europe. Abdurrahman III in the 10th century, Hasda ibn Shaprut was so powerful that he was writing letters to the ancestors of Joseph who were in Khazaria. Joseph is an Ashkenazi Jew. Okay, his ancestors come from Khazaria.
Okay, that's not true. We can go there, that's completely categorically false.
But there are, okay, this is something we can come back. That's not anti-Semitism, by the way. That's,
it is. It's
I mean,
the Jewish people.
You mean Ashkenazis?
Ashkenazi Jews are from the Middle East. I've got Middle Eastern DNA. I can show you.
Oh, but how is that anti-Semitism?
To say that because you're denying the Jewish agency of the Jews, it's a myth that's propagated predominantly by anti-Semites. The Ashkenazi Jews are not real Jews at all. They're descending from Khazars.
If it is an academic opinion, you can disagree with it. You can say it's rubbish. So, I mean, I'm not saying the opinion is true or not. We can talk about it another time, but I'm just presenting the opinion. It may well be very unpleasant, but to call it anti-Semitism, I don't agree with that. But anyway, so Hasda ibn Shaprut was writing letters to the king of Khazaria. This was a group of people in, near Georgia, current-day Georgia, who had come to Judaism, who had embraced Judaism, and the entire state became Jewish after the king himself. The king had accepted Judaism or embraced Judaism. His name was King Joseph. So Hasda ibn Shaprut was writing letters to him. He was writing letters to the Jewish people of Baghdad, whether they need anything from him. He's in a powerful position. Likewise, there was another prime minister called Samuel Hanagit. Samuel Hanagit was the prime minister in Grenada, which was also a Muslim state. And I can give you a list of Jewish scholars, dignitaries, ministers, poets, philosophers, theologians who were flourishing under the rule of Islam in Spain, in North Africa, in Ayyubid Middle East, and as far as Mughal India. So what are we talking about here? So the Jewish condition was very much pleasant, and if you come back with more claims, then I will respond to them accordingly. Go ahead.
So you touched on, look at this. This is how it works. You get your soundbite, then the camera disappears.
What? Okay,
there's still two.
His mic is still with me. I don't know where he's going. Maybe he's changing his position.
Yeah. So you mentioned a few things, and the first one I wanted to talk to is perfect. You mentioned Maimonides, Harambam. Oh, the mic's going. We've lost the crowd. Sorry, YouTube.
No, there are two cameras here. There's still two cameras here. So don't be disappointed.
So you mentioned that after fleeing the Almohads, Maimonides went to Egypt. He lived in Fustat, which I think is near Cairo today, and now he lived there And there's a myth that's propagated by many, many Muslims that he had a great existence. He loved living there. It was good for him.
Why is that a myth?
Because I'm going to read you his own words that he wrote there while he was living there.
Okay.
So this is from something, and people can Google it, called Igeret Teman, which is the epistle to
The
Yemen.
Yemeni Jews.
To the Yemeni Jews.
Okay.
So
It is highly doubted, by the way.
No, it's not.
Actually, the content of the letter is myth. It is not confirmed whether this letter can be traced back to Maimonides. We will discuss that. We'll come back to that. So before you use a source against me, please ensure that the source is actually authentic. What we do know.
Okay, what were your sources for Hastei Shaprut? What was your sources for Shmuel HaNagid? What was your sources for all of them?
Jewish writings as well as Muslim writings.
No.
Jewish as well as Muslim writings.
Which Jewish writings?
With Jewish writings?
No, which ones?
I have read a book titled The History of the Sephardic and Mizrahi Jewry. The author's name is Zion Zohar, Jewish author who has written the history of the Sephardic and Mizrahi Jewry. The name of the book is The History of the Sephardic and Mizrahi Jewry. Zion Zohar is the author. Then Bernard Lewis, also a Jewish historian, right? So any sources I will use, mainly they are Jewish sources,
So
Jewish historians.
This is the interesting part. I'm actually bringing something which Jews universally accept as being authentic. You've read two books by contemporary
No,
scholars.
two. Okay, you want more names? You want a list?
All I'm trying to do
Okay, so just because I mentioned two doesn't mean I don't.
There are very few religious Jews that doubt the authenticity of the Agera. You're saying otherwise, and that's fine because you've read a book, and that's fine, or read a couple of books, or a few books, but I'm going to read what Maimonides actually says in his words.
Okay.
Now you can cast doubt on that, just like...
We don't know. Maimonides actually said that. We don't know. When there's a doubt, what's the point of reading something? If I say Prophet Muhammad said X, Y, and Z, and if we cannot prove whether he said it or not,
But
what's
the
the
only
point?
person who's casting doubt is you. Who says that this is false?
Okay, can you give us the source as to?
I just give you Igeret Taman. It's accepted universally as being written by Maimonides.
Who
You're saying it isn't,
accepted?
so I'm saying, what's your evidence that it isn't? Who says it isn't?
Scholars.
Which scholars?
Historians.
Which historians?
Okay, this is something I will.
Okay, you don't know, so you can come back.
No.
In the YouTube comments, you can say where.
I will come back to you.
Yeah.
On this because
Okay.
this discussion.
Until then,
I didn't come.
Until then, I'm going to.
I didn't come prepared for this discussion.
Yeah, neither
if you
did I,
want,
neither
if
did
you
I,
want,
neither did I.
there are references I have. Okay, if you raise a specific question, we can come back to it.
So
No problem.
one thing I want to point out.
Yeah.
You spoke for 15 minutes, 10 minutes. I didn't say a word.
Okay, so
I spoke.
before
the minute I spoke, you started challenging, saying that's not real, that's not real.
Oh no, okay, no problem. Go ahead.
So
Yeah.
what I'm going
That's
to read
fair.
is what Maimonides actually says in his words. Now, this is half well into it, but effectively what's happening, there was Jews in Yemen who were considering converting to Islam, and he wrote a letter to the leader of that community, and this is effectively what he wrote. This is well into it. Remember, my co-religionists, that on account of the vast number of our sins, God has hurled us into the midst of this people, the Arabs, who have persecuted us severely. So Maimonides, who is your example of someone who...
Carry on reading. Yeah, please. I want you to read this now. This is actually helping me, by the way. We'll see how.
And passed beautiful and discriminatory legislation against us, as Scripture has forewarned us. Our enemies themselves shall judge us. Never did a nation molest, degrade, debase, and hate us as much as they. Therefore, when David, of blessed memory, inspired by the Holy Spirit, envisaged the future tribulations of Israel, he bewailed and lamented their lot, only in the kingdom of Ishmael, and prayed in their behalf. And on it goes. But effectively,
No. Continue. I want you to continue reading a bit more. Few more lines. Continue.
What do you expect it to say?
Continue. Yeah, why are you reading it before you? I mean, keep reading.
Tribulations of Israel.
No. Start from where you stopped.
That's what I'm just getting to. Bewailed and lamented their lot in the kingdom of Ishmael, and prayed in their behalf for their deliverance, as is implied in the verse. Woe me, that I sojourn with Meshech, that I dwell beside the tents of Kedar. Note the distinction between Kedar and the children of Ishmael.
Carry on. It's actually helping me. Carry on. This is going to carry on. Please do.
Yep.
You brought this up, I didn't bring it up.
For the Meshuggah and is of the lineage and children of Kedar, as they readily admit.
Yes.
Daniel alludes only to our humiliation and degradation, like dust in the threshing, suffered at the hands of the Arabs. May they speedily be vanquished, when he says, and some of the host of the stars it cast down to the ground and trampled upon them. Although we dishonored by them beyond human endurance, and had to put up with their fabrications, yet we behaved like him, who is depicted by the, sorry, I'm not a good reader, by the inspired writer. But I am as a deaf man, I hear not, and I am as dumb man that, I am as a dumb man that openeth his mouth. Similarly, our sages instructed us to bear the provocations and preposterousness of Ishmael in silence. So on and on and on it goes. I don't want to bore the audience by reading all of it. But the basic, no, you spoke, I speak. The basic premise, after he made me read all that really bad, I apologise. But the basic premise is, Adnan said that the Almohads were bad. I accept that. Maimonides is my proof that the Muslims treat the Jews well. Because Maimonides, when he fled the Almohads,